Good evening. This is Professor Amina Aldine, or what's left of her voice, and I have the honor of having with me this evening Mr. Ali Rizvi, who I used to work with closely. He is a Pulitzer Prize winning, Emmy nominated video storyteller. He creates characters facing wait a minute. He creates short character facing documentaries. I know that that's a phrase. Okay. As a filmmaker first, he brings his unique video production techniques and cinematography skills to today's news landscape. The goal is always to listen first, but to also gently interrogate the valuable out of the mundane. In the past, he's proud to have been impactful and award winning video storytelling work on ESPN, ABC, Disney, MTV, and the Video Lab at McClatchy, which is a I know McClatchy. It's a conglomerate of papers in the U.S., where he helped break the Pulitzer Prize winning Panama paper story, which we're going to hear about also. He is grateful to his original alma mater of University of Houston downtown, and he finished his bachelor's in marketing despite the struggles, and it allowed him to construct a dream career and pick up a master's in cinematic arts from DePaul University here in Chicago. Welcome, Mr. Risby. I am so sorry. I probably batched that. It got too many syllables and some of those things, but now we're ready to go. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I'm just so delighted. I haven't seen you since you left us, and I missed my man in the back room who could tell me what he couldn't do.
As I said before, you look exactly the same. And I was, and you give me too much credit. I actually worked for you, not with you.
No. So, given that I didn't have a clue as to what I was doing, it's with me. It's always.
I don't want to have to say it, but you're right. I'm joking.
I knew I could spell video cinematography. That was it. And you trying your best to tell me, and I didn't get it as usual. I'm slow. I want to take you down a road, if you don't mind, because I know all of us know about Emmys. We know about Pulitzers, kind of up there in the ether, because we'll never get one. We'll never be nominated. We'll never even see the darn picture of the sucker. So tell us about Emmy, because Emmy is for television work.
It is.
So can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
Sure. So I've been nominated for multiple Emmys. I used to work at, ESPN, and I used to work with the Sports Center franchise. So they win Emmys all the time. It was like a group thing. So that was the first time I actually got a nominated for Emmy, because it was with like a giant group of people that work with Sports Center, the franchise. As far as the Pulitzer goes, there's a funny story behind that. So basically, I'm a filmmaker by trade, and I got hired with this company called McClatchy here in DC. They own about 30 newspapers in the United States, and my job was to help any of the papers, if they were working on any big stories, I would help them do the video part of it. So once I got hired, I was immediately contacted by the Miami Herald, which was one of McClatchy's papers. And the Miami Herald was like, so thank you for doing video. We've been working on this secret project for like 2-3 years. We go live in about a month. We realized we need some video to go along with our reporting. And within like a couple of weeks, I was supposed to come up with something that accompanied this historic, like, stories that they were going to print about the Panama Papers, about.
Well, wait a minute, back up. Tell us about what are the Panama Papers?
So the Panama Papers, for those who don't know, is essentially a series of stories that was presented or broken by the Miami Herald newspaper. They had access to law firms, leaked papers in Panama. Uh,
Wow,
Panama is one of the countries where rich people funnel a lot of money
a
through.
lot of money.
Like they use shell corporations, essentially ghost corporations. Anybody with a lot of money can buy these ghost corporations, and then those ghost corporations can go around the world on your behalf and buy things and basically kind of move money around. And then there's other hot spots in the world, just like Panama, like Dubai, I think the the Cayman Islands. All these places have uh, all these places are places where you can have like a ghost corporation. So you can have
Oh,
one ghost corporation that owns another ghost corporation that owns another ghost corporation.
oh,
And by the time the authorities catch up with you, you close all the ghost corporations, and then you move on. So it's impossible to catch rich people.
I was
So
just getting ready to say I'll never have a ghost corporation, but I get it.
right, but that was the project, and my job was to explain that in video, and they only gave me like a couple of weeks to do it, and they had like 2 years to work on this like investigative project, right? So I essentially got together with another friend of mine who was also working with me at that time, and he was an animator. And I was like, let's do an explainer on what a ghost corporation or shell corporation is and how rich people hide their money. It's
Mm,
just a generic enough thing that can be watched before anytime anybody reads the article, because people watch the news before they read it now.
right,
It'd be a good primer on what they're expecting, and if they want more detail, they can actually read the stories we're publishing, because it's a dense subject matter, right? So
right.
essentially, we did an explainer for on behalf of the Panama Papers and what and how these people hide their money, and it was very like easy to follow even for somebody like me. And I basically did it for an audience of me, because if I can understand how rich people hide
Yeah,
their,
yeah.
then anybody could. So we did that. It took us like 3 weeks, and basically the video went on top of like any article we published regarding that investigation. So people saw it like 20 million times more than the actual investigation.
Wow.
Um, Long story short, uh, we had a group of about 7 or 10 people here in the United States within McClatchy that were working on the secret project. I was one of them.
Uh-huh.
And we got nominated for a Pulitzer Prize.
Oh, wait
Before
a minute. What is the nomination exactly for? The
investigative journalism.
correctness of the reporting, the clearness of the explanation. What is the nomination for?
Good question. I think here's what I think it's for. I think it's handling the magnitude of the information and presenting it in responsible, ethical way, an
Okay.
unbiased way that McClatchy is typically known for. They all McClatchy is also originally famous for breaking the weapons of mass destruction story,
Hmm.
and they're based out of DC. And so the old school journalists. So we got nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. That was kind of surreal. I didn't pay any attention to it because never get one. I'll never get one. But before we got nominated for that, we also got nominated for an Emmy. So here's the funny thing: I actually didn't win the Emmy for this little video explainer I did, but I ended up winning the Pulitzer like a month later for it. So it kind of worked.
Wow.
So in a nutshell, that's that.
Ah, I feel like I'm in the space of greatness here.
Oh,
Not quite sure what to do with myself,
I,
but tell me a little bit about the kind of journalism that you do.
so it's a relatively new field, I think. Um, so just to give you an example, I was basically working as a video editor in New York City before I came to Washington D.C. I
Okay.
was working at ESPN. I was working with MTV, pop culture, music and video and things like documentaries. My wife got into law school here in DC, so I decided to follow her because she'll be making more money than I'll ever will. So I moved to DC, and one of the first people that contacted me here were like a group of journalists, McClatchy. And after I Googled what a McClatchy was, and accepted their offer because I was desperate at that time for anything,
Yeah.
I realized it's an old journalism company, and journalism companies are so slow and they're so old that in the case of McClatchy, they didn't have a video department, and they had 30 papers.
No
No video
video.
infrastructure, no video infrastructure, no formalized nothing. This was in 2015. So I was brought in to help sort of create this in-house startup that helped all our papers back then with any video assistance that they needed. Um,
Why would a newspaper need video assistance?
well, like I mentioned before, just the nature of the society we live in, all over the world, people tend to
Watch it.
they don't hate reading, but they like to watch something often before they want to read more about it. And in order to
Some.
do that, you have to do it right too. You can't just like put on any video. People often want to see some nuanced briefing of something before they want to
Mm,
be invested in something. That's just how I see it. My video editing skills and my producing skills, the storytelling skills on video transferred really well over to the journalism side because I already was doing what I was doing.
yeah.
Now I
Okay.
was doing it helping, tell nonfiction stories. Often things that were happening live.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to imagine myself being an undergrad student, trying to figure out how do I break in to where you've been and are still going.
Yeah, it's difficult. Like I said, it's a new field, video journalism. There's, it's often not necessarily. There's no vernacular for some of these roles.
I see.
So it's not formalized. If somebody's interested in breaking in it, I think the first thing you should know is how to edit video,
I see.
you know, and have an interest in something that you want to move forward. Like if gender rights is something that you're passionate about, that's the best way to tell your side of the story, and that's through video. uh,
So if I were to take what we were doing now and it's stored somewhere digitally, and I'm getting ready to seriously reveal my ignorance here, um, and it's stored somewhere, I could then go back and put it on a video editor and then splice, dice, move, heighten, lighten, expand.
Reappropriate for the current time you're in. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll do that in my next incarnation.
Mm.
That's an idea. It sounds like fun. It means I don't have to get up and go do much. I can sit and do it. Okay. Now, what I want to you've done some stories. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the stories that you've worked on? I know
Yeah.
you worked in Oregon. I know you're here, you're there, you're everywhere. Tell us about some of those.
That's a very broad question. Um,
Okay, well I'm sure you can narrow it for me.
I mean, I can give you an example. Well, I give you several examples, and you can choose which direction to go in from there.
Okay.
So I covered the last DNC in 2016. Good lord,
Yeah,
it was a long time ago. Feels like.
I
Uh,
know.
so that was a radical insanity. Like I don't know. There's no words to describe it. It's such a weird atmosphere. I covered essentially, there's a terrorist attack that happened here in Alexandria, Virginia, where a domestic terrorist dude with probably mentally challenged, because in this case it was he definitely was mentally challenged. He shot had a bunch of senators playing baseball, and I think somebody, I think,
Right, right.
it was right
They
by
had
my
that
house.
on
Yeah.
TV. Uh-huh.
I once
How
went.
do you how do you cover that?
It's difficult because there's a lot of media here in DC already with state of the
Right.
art technology, so we didn't have a chance to like do anything breaking. I just took like a 360-degree camera and I put it right at the scene
What
of.
is that, one of those things that flies?
No, no, no.
Oh,
So it's a camera where you, the viewer at home, can literally like tune into like this video, and you can move your phone around, and then you can see in real time what the camera is seeing all around.
I
Does that
want
make
one.
sense?
I want one.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure they're relatively cheap now, but
Mm.
that's kind of like how we explored that subject matter. Um, just to show people it was like
So the
normal.
man, this man, if I remember correctly, he was these senators were going for an RNC or DNC. I'm not sure which one it
I think they
was.
were just having a baseball game in the morning,
A baseball game, kind of like a traditional baseball game.
something like that. I don't
And he
recall.
saw an opportunity, and he had been sleeping in his car or something.
Yeah, he was driving from like cross country. I don't remember the details. I apologize. It's
It's
just one of the
okay.
things I covered. But there was definitely something off about the guy. Even like conservative news outlets were sort of like, admitting that. So there's that. Um, Mostly because he shot like a conservative senator, I think.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So, but anyway, that was one of the things, and so I'm just giving you a breadth of things that I covered.
Right.
I covered like local issues with like small papers, because we had a lot of small papers as well. So like football games and things like that, riots at football games. That's some of the things, because those type of riots are seen completely differently as as opposed to like when people of color riot. Specifically when riots involving black folks happen in the United States. Um, I was
Say
covering.
more.
I
Say
was
more.
so I was covering. I went to. We had a small paper out in Pennsylvania, in State College. I think what's the big university? PSU is there. Pittsburgh. Good God, Penn State is there, right?
Yes.
Um, and that little paper needed some help covering one of the biggest games they had, right? Going football games, and I was like, whatever. I went there. I don't like football. I was hanging out at the game, trying to take some video, but there
Mm,
was so much media there. You can't possibly compete with CNN covering or
right.
ESPN covering like a game like that. So, but I noticed, there was a lot of kids, like underage kids, drinking with impunity, like, and I was like, that's weird. Why are people letting these kids drink? They're
Right.
obviously very young, and there's like a crowd of 50,000 people or something. It was a huge stadium, and I decided that day to abandon the game. I was like, I'm gonna go to the little town center here in the city and see what's going on there.
Mm,
So I went there, and I think they won the game. The PSU won the game.
okay.
And sure enough, everybody came out into the little town center. It was like thousands of people, thousands and thousands of people. I want to say it must have been like at least 5 to 10,000 people.
Mm,
And they were like rioting. They burned down like the streets, trash cans, smashed cars, storefronts,
wow.
all because one evening a random football team beat another football team. And it wasn't even a great win. It was just like a normal football game.
Mm, mm,
I had access to the local newspapers' Facebook page, right? And because I was covering them and I was like putting pictures on and stuff like that. I went I went live with that footage, of the rioting that was
oh,
happening and things like that.
yeah.
And police, there were like kids throwing like Hail Hitler sign, things like that. That was No one was batting an eye, and I was just sort of capturing that live on Facebook. And the
Wow.
editors of that little paper got really upset. They were like, "This is not what we asked you to help us with. You were supposed to take pictures and videos of the game."
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
And
But the
granted, they had
riot
like
was
4 other photographers and people doing that stuff at the game already. You
awful.
know, so that's the type of small things that I was sort of like, I was trying to show the real story, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Random
But
like
in
football.
America, the real stories
Right,
are rare.
right. So, and this is just a normal day in in the life of what I did back when I was a video journalist. Of course, some of the big stories included things like they sent me, a brown guy, to go cover the Oregon standoff, where a bunch of militants, right wing extremists, militants, hold up in a federal, federal lands, somewhere in Oregon, in the middle of nowhere, Oregon. Um, and how do you cover that? There's no way to like compete with CNN or Fox or
Right.
MSNBC with satellite. They have everything there. And Vice now and all these other places. So I show up there. There's a bunch of media there at a checkpoint, and you can actually drive further from the checkpoint as media as well if you wanted to. I actually drove all the way in towards the blockade where the militants were. They had set up camp, and I kind of just walked in, and they looked at me. They looked at my camera, and I was the only like brown person there. Uh, and they were like, "Are you media?" I was like, "Yeah," and they were like, "Okay, well, you can come in." And I basically like took a bunch of footage and I reported from there, took interviews and things like that within the occupation for like days. And they forgot about me. Like they actually forgot that I was there. And they gave me some insane type of interviews. Like about the real motives, like what they really wanted to do. They
Well,
wanted
what
to.
were the motives?
Well, they wanted to overthrow the government and that type of nonsense. They wanted to overthrow Barack Obama's government at that point. They wanted to like assassinate him. This is what they said. They wanted to overthrow the Oregon government, um, all while like just laden with grenades and like guns and things like. They're saying these things out loud while the FBI waits miles outside of their camp. Just
Wow.
wait, you know. And um, it's it's so
Scary.
weird. It's so scary, And I was sending these things to my editors back home here in DC, so they were putting these things up. And some of the interviews I conducted with some of these militants actually got these militants arrested and charged. The feds used my footage to do it.
Wow.
I know this because they subpoenaed me. That was my first subpoena, federal subpoena, for all my footage and that type of thing. But yeah, and then I got scared. I was like, "Oh, these militants are like
Gonna come get you.
come after me." But fortunately, we look like the same to them, so I'm kind of like good, you know.
That is just so. I do watch Vice. I'm a fan, a great fan of video journalism and investigative journalism, and because it's journalism
Yeah,
as opposed to people reading prompters and looking good and doing other stuff. The real work is done on the ground. And
hmm,
I know that Hassan Minhaj has a thing about where, the fact that the papers are disappearing. And
right.
that's where the real investigative journalism of all sorts was happening, where you could uncover graft and this, that, and the other. And oh my God, if we don't have them, we're dead. I mean, you guys are gonna have to force stories into the mix of craziness.
That's unfortunate, but that's an accurate description of it. Not to pile on the bad news, but after I sort of left McClatchy, they laid off like a third of the workforce, just because the profits are not there, and I don't know what the answer to that is. And then like right before COVID nonsense happened, they actually filed for bankruptcy. McClatchy did. So I don't know what the future holds. It's not necessarily the brightest for local newspapers or even big ones. I mean,
Yeah,
the Sacramento Bee is also owned by them. The Charlotte Observer, the Miami Herald.
all
These are
the
not small papers. They're struggling, man.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and as with any profession, and you mentioned it, being a brown body thrown in the halls of power because media is power.
It
Tell
is.
us about it.
Again, a broad question. I mean, I only have,
Well, I only do broad questions. Would you just chill?
I, I I'll give you a 10,000 foot view of what my opinion on the matter, and my based on my experiences. I don't know if it's the complete truth because who knows what the truth is, but
Right.
I can give you what I think is something relatively accurate as opposed to completely precise. So, I've been telling stories all my life because I have the power of video editing. It comes easy to me. I can put stories together on video.
Uh,
Uh, and doing that in a fictional setting, like or like let's say in the sports setting, like at ESPN
hmm
or MTV, where I'm doing working with musicians and like putting together narratives, that type of thing. That's different because they rely on your creativity to bring their vision together, this and that.
Okay.
Working with journalism, it's I'm trying to like find a way to articulate this. So I brought a skill set, and they were looking for that, right?
Okay.
But they weren't ready for my opinions on the matter. So
Mm,
they may have hired me as a part of their diversity initiative. I hope that's not true, but they probably did because I was the only brown person working in this legendary newsroom, right?
mm,
And these people were legendary. Some of these people are I'm friends with to this day. They're just amazing, like legendary news people. They're
okay.
connected to everybody, and they're super ethical. And that's all they do for a living.
Okay.
So you're surrounded by all these people, but then you start to see there's some hollowness involved there, where some of them don't even know basic things about people that don't look like them.
Yeah.
Right? I had to correct a few people on their stories that Turkey is not part of like South Asia, or
Are you
how
serious?
I'm not joking,
Oh my goodness.
or
I believe it. I believe it.
yeah, or how Kashmiri people are not necessarily they're not from the Middle East. Just basic things, and that blew me away. That blew me away. And then like you start realizing, where am I sitting? I'm sitting in Washington D.C. I'm in the most liberal places in the United States, like the liberal progressive media,
Right.
in a room which is like no 95% white on any given day.
Right.
And I'm the only person of color oftentimes. So they've hired me as a diversity initiative of some sort, but their machinery doesn't involve me when moving forward. I'm just an ornament. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. Trust me, I
It's
do.
an acolyte. It's a check thing. I mean, you know what I'm saying, but
Yeah.
I'm asking as rhetorically. So there were times where I would see this really like weirdness going on, where obliviousness, and I try to address it, and I would be completely ignored, absolutely like just goes over their heads.
Yeah. Well,
Oftentimes, it had to do with like and because some of the papers we had are in impoverished areas where like a lot of African Americans live and
right.
Hispanics live,
Right.
and having doing a story about those areas while not consulting with somebody from there is a huge
All
issue.
the time.
And
Yes.
I was the only line of defense protecting this entire newspaper chain from like getting a lawsuit or something.
Uh-huh.
Me, you know, it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like that. It's we had. I'll give you a specific example. So we did a mini series on these. We own a paper out in Fort Worth. McClatchy did the Fort Worth Telegram, Star Telegram, or whatever. And the Telegram wanted to work with us. They wanted to create like a little mini episodes on Facebook on video episodes. They wanted to follow these like incarcerated kids in Texas. Uh, Almost all of them were black, some were Hispanic, but minority kids, right? And it was a high school for incarcerated kids. And because it was a high school, they had a football team, and because they had a football team, they were mandated by the state to play other schools.
Okay.
Uh, so these incarcerated kids, just to leave the school was a huge production, and it made for interesting TV, right? So we were sort of editing those videos. We were following those kids every week. We would do that type of thing. I was the lead editor, and the people that were shooting all the stuff and producing it were these white women. Nothing against white women, but I'll get to the point in a second. Some of my best friends are white women. No, I'm joking. So they'll come back to me with all this footage, and I'll chop it up with my subordinates, and we'll present it to our editors, and then they'll write, they'll be like, okay, that's great. So one of the episodes centered around some of these incarcerated kids playing football in an actual game, where they kept coming back to their coach and be like, "Coach, the other team is calling us the N-word and telling us to go back to our cells and this and that." So I put that little piece like in that episode, and then all the white people in the room were like, "Well, we don't have any proof of these kids being called the N-word. See,
No, even though you're looking at it,
they're criminals, and we can't really trust." I'm like, "This is not your story. I'm from Texas. I could tell you any given day on any suburban football game, you'll hear the N-word."
yeah.
So it's such a basic thing, the aloofness, and it builds over time.
Yeah.
And it's evident everywhere, and it really messed me up because just just to take a second back, in the newsroom itself, people didn't even know my name. They often referred to me as the other guy, brown guy in the bureau, and they'll switch our names back and forth, and that guy looks nothing like me. He has hair. He's got hair, for starters.
Yeah, but it is that brutal, daily, persistent forcing into invisibility.
Yeah.
That is what all of us who have brown bodies live with. You're the professional, the talent is used, but the humanity is ignored.
That would be a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And it takes a toll on
you.
It takes a toll on you.
It does. It does. I think that especially African Americans, it's not that we build up a resistance, but what it is because you're taught from a little kid that it's always going to be there and that you must pick and choose when to freak out on somebody.
Yeah.
To let the steam out before the pressure cooker pops. Um,
Yeah.
but I can't imagine someone who's never had to, really think about it. It wasn't in the mother's nurturing and all of that stuff. When it hits, what do you do with it?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's opening up a whole new can of things, and to educate people about that. That's a whole another thing. Yeah, it's a whole other industry.
Yeah, it is very, very true.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to pivot just a little bit. Um, my husband did the khutbah today for Sound Vision, which is the parent company of the Muslim Network TV. And his subject today, well, he had a couple of subjects, but the one I want to focus on is pornography. And because Sound Vision had put up on its website lots of articles for reading, because the pandemic, epidemic, I can't think of another demic word, endemic, um, proliferation of pornography has been going on for about a decade, but it just gets worse. Everywhere. I mean, I can't imagine being the parents of a young child now and trying to figure out what can you watch.
Oh yeah.
And you don't want to create an atmosphere where the kid doesn't get to watch that which is good on TV. Um, but now the pornography, the naked women, naked old women. I'm saying, really, do I need to see an old broad? An old woman in her underwear, you know, and the men in their boxer briefs and their spandex, and I'm saying, oh my God, you know, what is going on here? There's a deluge of uh, Knopf's ticklers. You know, it's like if you got a desire and it's hidden, we will stick something out there and tickle it. What do you do with all that stuff?
The answer is I don't know. Uh, I'm new to this. I should be asking you this. I have a newborn. Well, he's an old born now. He's like 15 months.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He'll be running you in 2 minutes.
Yeah, he
Well,
already.
I don't know. You know, when my kids were young, there was Sesame Street. There was that idiot. What is his name? Mr. Rogers or something or the other. And there were all of these things where I got to the point of the songs would just roll in my head, and I'm
Right.
saying if I hear that song one more time, I'm gonna go crazy. Then I had grandkids because my grandkids range from 22 to 4.
Hmm.
So every iteration has been a new song to play. The Mickey Mouse fan club. I
Mm.
mean, I really, and I thought, I said, you know, I hope God is not watching as I stomp this crap and tippy toe it to the trash. Because
Mm.
if I hear that song one more time, I'm going to freak. But the what? For Muslims, and I want to get into a very sensitive area here. You know, Muslims, those who are not schooled in Islam, have this thing of running around calling everything haram. Only Allah makes the haram. And that's a very tiny category. You know, it's haram to brush your teeth from left to right, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, it's haram to do this. It's haram to do that. Um, and technically, no, the what is haram is a very tiny category of things. Um, but when you make something that is permissible for you and enjoyable taboo,
Hmm.
you're tipping up on opening a Pandora's box where anything that titillates is going to really knock you on your boobas. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we have all of these Muslims, instead of worrying about social justice, truth telling, the stories of people seating themselves in society, chasing black and white and brown women in pornography films on their computers, you
Yeah.
know, and then at the same time chastising others for not being pious enough.
Yeah. I mean, that's that's succinct. I would say, you're right. I think that approach, not seeing the forest for the trees,
Yeah.
you, a lot of people are like, you're losing a lot of people to of your faith
Yes.
because
The
it's very
revolving
easy
door.
to, yeah, it's very easy to like, reveal any mysterious thing on Google. It takes 5 seconds. If you're lying about something to like keep somebody from something, that's probably not the right way to do it because they'll figure it out in a second. You know, um, you lose a lot of people, and I was one of those people that that the faith has lost,
Yeah.
because not necessarily because, so in my journey was a little different, but I could say just generally speaking after 9/11, Muslim communities became very insular because
Right.
admittedly they had to protect themselves, and they sort of kind of cocooned themselves together. So you saw a lot more. No disrespect to anybody, and I'm going to disrespect them probably. But you saw a lot more beards, the religious kind. You saw a lot more, hijabs. You saw, first timer hijabs, and you saw a lot more people being more conservative in the Muslim community. They became very insular, just because I think they were being defensive. And That's one of the issues the community is facing, because the rigidness of it, they've lost sight, in my opinion anyway. This is, based on my observation, they've lost sight of what's important. um
How do you get back? That's what's important. I mean, because I teach, colonialism restricted the Muslim gaze to ibadah.
yeah,
So then we have hyper ibadah people, wash your uncles telling you wash your feet between the toes, and all kinds of crazy stuff going on. Oh, God doesn't like this. Like they sit at God's right hand and they know what the happening is.
right,
But I understand that. So that when the Muslim world after is it's not an after colonialism because it's still very much there, can't get itself together to be on the world scene. So we're still inside of communities in this hyper phase, right?
yeah,
Not paying attention to the young people except to put more and more restrictions on what they can do, how they can interact in
yeah,
the worlds that they have put them in. I'm incredulous. I mean, this revolving door, and then this castigation of the people who say, "I think I've had enough." It's not that I don't like God. It's not that I don't even like most of you, but I'm tired of hanging out with you. You know,
right, right. Well, I mean, there's a word that people don't like to talk about that needs to be put in action, and that's like your faith, your collective faiths under the Islamic umbrella need to evolve with
right?
time.
Yeah,
And whole, who am I to say that? I may be wrong, but like I feel like that's the central and most defining theme of everything we're talking about. A lot of the people walk away because it's just not relevant to them. You're just not to
exactly.
do that.
It does nothing.
It makes them feel nothing. There's no emotion there. It feels like a hollow set of skeletons walking around,
Right.
you know, and people oftentimes just forget about them. That's not authentic. So there's that. I mean, I feel like this is like a whole other conversation for another day too. Like, we
Oh,
could
we're
talk
gonna
about,
have it. Have no fear.
yeah, we could talk about like, ex-Muslims. There's a lot of ex-Muslims I know that are former Muslims, that have left for this reason. They're not like rabid anti-Muslims, like you see that are amplified on
Mhm.
the media, but they're just normal people that are still culturally Muslim. Meaning, like, I'll give you an example. Like my father passed away 11, 12 years ago. My brothers and I, who are not very religious, um, I was an atheist. My brothers are still a little bit agnostic, but we buried him the only way we know how, which was the Shia Islamic way. We're not
Mhm.
going to invent new atheist ways of doing things, right?
Right.
That doesn't happen that way. So culturally, we're still Islamic, kind of like Muslim. It doesn't really necessarily mean anything to us except for the fact that this is what makes us comfortable. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
hold a wing for my father and like turn off like my Muslim friends and family. That would be
Yeah. Yeah.
strange even for me. I don't even believe in faiths. So there's that. So culturally, it's relevant. We'll have Eid parties, my wife and I. My wife is still Muslim, but in my Eid parties, we will probably have alcohol. And if somebody wants to bring some ribs, great. I love ribs. You know,
But
uh,
they're beef ribs, dude.
I don't discriminate. Is what I'm trying to say. I don't judge. I've learned to not judge. I guess that's what it is.
Hmm.
That's just me personally talking.
No, but it's your voice is echoing the sentiments of many. And you're right. I'm going to look at this. Um, I am intrigued by how do I get you to work with me to do some video stories of life under the pandemic and Ramadan under the pandemic and the pandemic and Ramadan and protests.
Hmm. We can
Now,
talk. We can talk about that.
oh, I can talk my way through anything. I can't do anything, but I can talk my way through it. I mean, you have such a wealth of experiences, which touch on race, they touch on class, they touch on religion, they touch on what do we mean when we're talking about diversity, and what the hell is multiculturalism if you're going to make the people who are not like you invisible. You know what I'm saying? I mean, what are you talking here? I mean, there's so many avenues to explore.
Yeah, I think it's not difficult. I'll give you your example. Just empathy. People have given me chances in my life that didn't necessarily require. You didn't have to give me a chance. I was in a very weird place when I was at DePaul. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a job. I was going to school. Wasn't sure about it, but you gave me a chance to work with you. Sort of energized me a little bit, enough to like get back into the groove of things. I went to a small university in Houston. It was a small college. I actually was so bad at school, I got kicked out of the University of Houston. And this small university gave me a chance, and they're like, "Come on down. We'll let you work with us. I know you have like a low GPA. We'll let you take some courses. Let's see where we go from there." I was able to graduate, just like heck out of graduation. Things
Okay.
like that, small things, and I try to use that same sentiment, and I try to help out people, and I prioritize, black children that often reached out to me on LinkedIn, and people of South Asian origin that are underrepresented in the journalism industry. But I try to do the same thing. I make time for them, mostly because I'm jobless now and I don't have much to do, but also because I'd love to like share
Oh,
with them like anything I possibly can. If I can point them in the right direction, I try to do that.
well, here I am getting ready to point you again. Muslim Network TV needs you and your skills. And I am so, it's also a way to connect those who are living in those rural villages that you're talking about with those of us who will never meet them. I'm not quite sure yet how one does that, but I know it can be done because I am close to getting no, I'm not going to get a Facebook page. I think I'll still read my daughters. But, you know, um, there's so many ways that we can use what has become a wonderful opportunity for reflection on how we transition skills, how we remake them, you know what I'm saying, and how we expand them.
Right, right, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no right answer, but there's always discussions to be had, and something could always come from it. You never know. I'm always open to things. Whenever I'm not changing diapers, I'm always open to things.
I love this. I could never have pictured you as a diaper changing dude. I'm having a ball. I'm going to give you the last minute to leave the audience with something. It can be on any of the things that we discussed,
Yeah, sure.
something new.
I think it's important to be. I used to laugh when people used to say that be your authentic self,
Ah,
and I know what that means. I have a feeling I know what that means now. It means it's a vehicle for you to be able to function as a better human being in life. If you are your authentic self, you can tell your stories. You will know your weaknesses. You will know your strengths, and you can talk about those things.
yeah.
Tell your stories, and when you tell your stories, and if you don't tell these stories, no one's going to hear you. So there's that.
Or they'll tell it for you, and it won't be a
Oh
story to
yeah.
franchise.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
people are. Well, this is Professor Amina Aldi. I've had a wonderful hour with an old student. Well, he was young then, with a young student who I haven't seen in ages. I am so excited. And we will think of something to do I want to thank you again so much for your time. Um, and I will make use of your time in ways that you haven't thought of.
Pleasure is all mine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Salam. Assalam.